Hello and welcome to the Parkinson's Foundation's 9th Annual Care Partner Summit. I'm Krista Ellis and I'm so glad you're here with us today. This year's theme, Caring with Confidence, Identity, Boundaries, and Support, is all about navigating the continual changes that come with Parkinson's, both for the person living with the disease and for you, the care partner. At the Parkinson's Foundation, we know that caring for someone with Parkinson's is more than a role. It's a relationship that evolves over time. Our goal today is to help you feel supported, to feel informed, and to also feel more confidence as you care for your loved one while also caring for yourself. Throughout today's 2-hour program, you'll hear from Dr. Taylor Rush, a health psychologist from the Cleveland Clinic, and from 6 remarkable care partners who will share their lived experiences, insights, and wisdom. Together, we'll explore how identity shifts, how boundaries are tested or created, and how self-care becomes essential to sustaining both partners' well-being. Before we begin, it's my pleasure to welcome our Chief Executive Officer, John Lair, who will share a few words to open our program. John.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Lear, the President and CEO of the Parkinson's Foundation. I'm so pleased to welcome you to the 9th Annual Parkinson's Foundation Care Partner Summit. Today is about you, the care partners who make a meaningful difference every day in the lives of people with Parkinson's. Your compassion, adaptability, and strength truly embody the heart of our mission. I want to thank each of you for being here, whether you're joining us live or watching the replay, and for taking time to connect, learn, and grow together. I'd also like to extend our deep appreciation to the planning committee whose insights, time commitment, and lived experience helped shape the theme and content of today's summit. And a very special thank you to our sponsor, Amneal Pharmaceuticals, whose generous support makes this program possible. Amneal's partnership reflects a shared commitment to improving the lives of people with Parkinson's and those who care for them as well. As we all know, Parkinson's doesn't just affect one person, it affects families, friends, and communities. Care partners are essential members of the care team, and your dedication inspires everything we do at the Parkinson's Foundation. Throughout today's summit, you'll hear from experts and care partners who are living this journey every day. So thank you again for being here and for your partnership in this work. And again, once again, thank you to Amneal Pharmaceuticals for their support of this event. And before I turn it over to Chris, I just want to thank Krista Ellis, Daniel Akpalo, and Laura Cameron for all the great work they've done behind the scenes to make this possible. Thank you very much, everyone.
And thank you, John. As we begin, I just invite you to take a deep breath, settle in, grab some water, and open yourself to the stories, the tools, and reflections that remind us that we're not alone in this journey. This space right here today is for you, the care partners, whose strength, compassion, and resilience make such a difference every day. And today's program will be a mix of short education snippets and extended shared dialogue with our care partner panelists. So before we begin, I'd like to just take a moment to share what you can expect from today's program. Our time together will include, again, a mix of short educational snippets and extended shared dialogue with our care partner panelists. You'll hear both professional insights and real-life experiences that reflect the many ways people navigate Parkinson's care. We'll explore 3 main themes today: the evolution of Parkinson's and how it shapes identity, caregiving boundaries, when to step in and when to step back, finding balance between supporting your loved one and caring for yourself. Dr. Taylor Rush will help frame each of these topics with context and guidance, and then our panelists will bring those ideas to life through their lived experience. You're invited to share your reflections and questions throughout the session using the chat or the Q&A feature. Questions will be addressed as they fit naturally into our discussion. And most importantly, I encourage you to listen with an open heart. Every caregiving journey is unique, and the experience shared today represent a range of perspectives, all offered to support, inspire, and empower you. So now I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Taylor Rush, a clinical health psychologist from Cleveland Clinic's Center of Neurological Restoration. She serves as Director of Behavioral Health Services, leading a team that supports patients with Parkinson's and other movement disorders. Dr. Rush helps individuals adjust to diagnosis, manage depression and anxiety, improve communication, prepare for surgeries like DBS, and incorporate mindfulness to support emotional and physical well-being. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Taylor Rush.
Thank you, Krista, and thank you all for being here today. It's truly a privilege to be able to spend this time with you. And really, this time today is about you, care partners who give so much of yourselves while supporting your loved ones who have Parkinson's. And I really hope that this session today leaves you feeling seen, supported, and also reminds you that this isn't a journey that you have to travel alone. And so with that, I want us to, jump right into our first topic here. So the evolution of Parkinson's and identity. And as we start thinking about this, I really want to acknowledge, something that I think every person and family touched by Parkinson's comes to understand, which is that this journey is by no means a straight line, right? It involves a lot of cycles of adjustments as symptoms progress, as situations change, and as unpredictable challenges appear because life never goes quite as we expect it. There's always some sort of curveball that gets thrown in. And we know that this isn't just true for the person living with Parkinson's, it's equally true for the loved ones who are walking this journey too. And something that I have come to find out as a psychologist, and I think just as a human being, is that we by nature tend to resist change. And even good change can be really uncomfortable. And when it's tied to vital things like health and identity and daily life, it can feel especially disorienting because Parkinson's doesn't just affect how a body moves, it challenges how a person can see themselves. And I often hear from my patients that they'll say things like, I don't feel like myself anymore, or I worry about how others may see me. And interestingly, and I think not unexpectedly, we hear very similar things from care partners too. And I will often hear from care partners that they say, I've changed too. I'm not who I was before I became a care partner. And I think both of these experiences are profoundly human. And I think it really reflects how identity evolves under the weight of change. Now, I've worked with a lot of folks who have Parkinson's over the past 10 years and a lot of their family. And I've noticed that people who navigate this process most successfully are those who can see their situation clearly without denial and also without self-blame. And they're able to accept it for what it is. And that's something I often talk about in Mindfulness Mondays is, how do we come to accept the circumstances that are? Because it's not easy, as easy as it may sound on paper. And these individuals who kind of walk this line successfully with, being able to navigate and weather change, they learn to anchor to something deeper. There's a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense of connection, even if it looks completely different from what their lives once were. And there's a line from Nietzsche, and I actually have it. I'm looking over at my bookcase over here because I have it framed. He who has a why can bear almost any how. And I often work on that with patients and their families in terms of finding your why, your reason, your grounding, and that's what helps you move through each stage with resilience, with dignity, and sometimes even a slight bit of grace. So, this process of constant adaptation and self discovery obviously is going to look different for everybody, right? And so, for some, it's finding new ways to stay active or connected to others. For others, it's maybe redefining roles within a partnership or within their family. And for many, it is learning how to let go of what was in order for something new to emerge. So again, this is not a one-time transformation. It's iterative, it's ongoing, and it requires a lot of patience and courage and compassion towards yourself, most importantly, as well as the people around you. And I think that that is why gatherings like today are so incredibly special and meaningful. We're not here just to talk about change, but to be able to learn from each other and how identity can evolve, how meaning can be rediscovered, and how this journey, and even though it's very unique and deeply personal for each person, it does not have to be traveled alone. So today, our panelists are going to help us explore and discuss what this evolution looks like in real life, how people adapt, reconnect, and continue to find a sense of self and purpose through this journey of Parkinson's. So with that, I would ask that our panelists come on screen so that we can begin this conversation.
Taylor, thanks for introducing the subject of shifting identity and recognizing the evolution of Parkinson's. Before we jump into the dialogue, I really want to hear from each of our panelists. Just share who you are, what your relationship to Parkinson's disease is, maybe where you're tuning in from, and then we'll get into the content of conversation. Anyone feeling particularly inspired to start first?
I can.
Great.
I'm Jennifer Shetler, joining from Polk City, Iowa, and my husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2020. And I'm also a Parkinson's Foundation ambassador.
Thanks for joining, Jennifer.
I can go next. Hi, everybody. I am Nancy Shea. I live in New Jersey, and it's my husband who has Parkinson's. He was diagnosed about 9 years ago, and over the 9 years, the first 6 were very easy. I mean, he had it, but there wasn't many symptoms, and now things are really changing for us and for him. So I also am an ambassador to the organization, and it's a really good organization, and I would highly recommend to get involved if you aren't already.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm grateful that you felt the capacity with all the changes that are happening right now to that joining us today would still be supportive to you. So thank you for being here.
I'm happy to go next. I'm Terry Thompson. We're in San Antonio, Texas. I'm a care partner to my partner, Jeff, who was diagnosed in 2017. I am very much invested in this group because it's given so much to me and us. And so I'm here because I think it's important to give back when people make such a difference in your lives. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Terry. Vincent?
Good afternoon. My name is Vincent Tooke. I live in the Atlanta area. My wife, Adrienne, was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2021. I'm a research advocate for the Parkinson's Foundation, so we both are. And we just feel we just love to give back wherever we can. Just feel we've received a lot of information, a lot of help from the Parkinson's Foundation. And wherever we can give back and provide more information to anybody, we feel like we are obligated to do that. So I'm just glad to be here this afternoon.
Thank you, Vincent. And Lindsey?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsey Arnold, and I live in Indiana, just south of Indianapolis in Bloomington. And it was my father who was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2020. We did unfortunately lose him in 2024, New Year's Day. And so I continue to be engaged, just like others here. I am a Parkinson's Foundation ambassador and also a research advocate as well. And I like to continue to be engaged because the journey can feel very isolating. It can feel very challenging. I always want to pour into others and share my experiences and definitely let them know that they are not alone in this journey. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Lindsey. As Dr. Rush framed it up for us, this concept of change and recognizing that adaptation, self-discovery can look different depending on who you are as a person, a care partner, but also what is happening with the experience that your person with Parkinson's is having. And so I'd really appreciate us acknowledging if each of you could share, how has your sense of identity changed as Parkinson's has progressed for both of you and for your person with Parkinson's? What has changed, and sort of what has adapted in your life as the evolution of Parkinson's continues to unravel?
I think for me, it's just we both still work, so we have those challenges and trying to find our times to um, just in daily life, getting together and spending time and adding in all the things that um are challenges that come with Parkinson's, and even like finding time for fitness and all that. But I think we try to. I think some of the ways that have changed is there's certain things that it's harder for him to do now, um, have gradually happened, and um, I'm having to do those things. And I guess I've found that I'm more capable of doing things than I thought I would be.
Mm,
Um, and we look for I'm taking on some new things and that, but just finding those things that we can do together, like we've done ballroom dancing together and things like that, that we really enjoy, and just using laughter a lot, for accepting things as they are, and adapting how we can the best way for certain situations that come up.
mm. Yeah, I hear, Jennifer, that you are sort of adapting to these changes with joy rather than resistance, using
Um,
laughter.
we just I feel like we take each day as it comes, and if a challenge comes up, but, trying to make the best of things, like the things that we enjoyed, and just finding ways to keep doing those. We enjoy going to ball games, and if that means finding seats that are better for him, that there's fewer steps and things like that, just trying to keep life as, well, I don't want to say normal as possible,
Mm.
but just those things that we still find enjoyment in, and that how we can keep doing those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, doing the things you love, even if something about it has to change, you're still doing it.
Right.
I
Anyone
think
else?
one thing we've noticed is we're more dependent on each other than we
Mm,
were in the past. We both had careers and very busy and raised kids and all that. And now that we're retired and we're going through health challenges, we talk more about how are you feeling? What's your day been like? Not about work, but physically. And I think that's new for us. And it's good that we feel like the other person can be trusted.
yeah, I hear that the evolution for you, Nancy, was this interdependence between one another with the changing of your Parkinson's, and really trusting and being closer in a way that's through communication, that has allowed for you both to evolve.
And that he feels comfortable telling me when I just, I couldn't work out today. He's a very athletic person because it just didn't feel right, or he would have balance issues. Before, he would never have shared how he's really physically feeling with me, and now he does that. And it helps me understand what he's going through. And because I'm a problem solver, I will often leap to, well, here's what I would do. And I don't do that anymore.
Mm.
I really try to help him. What do you want to do about it? And man, that was not who I was a year ago. I could say, well, then you need to do this. And I don't, because I know what it feels like to always be told what to do. It has to come from him. And then we can work together on making it happen.
I can just piggyback on that, what Nancy said, because I think where I am right now in my own shift in identity is I'm such a control freak that I'm shifting from this idea of caregiver to care partner, that it's not just me. in this. And because of my tendency to try to control outcomes, I think have been taking on so much of the responsibility when the reality is Jeff's still there and can help me too. And when you talk about being vulnerable and having your person with Parkinson's be able to share what they're going through in an intimate way, I'm learning that we have to do that as well as care partners. And I think I've been afraid to do that in the past. Like, the other day, uh, Jeff admitted, like, I'm scared. And I was like, I'm scared too. And I was like, wait, I can tell you that. I can tell you that I'm scared, and we're not going to lose control of this situation, that we are partners in this journey. And so I'm learning that I have to loosen a lot of my retentiveness and my need to control to be a true a care partner. And it certainly is a journey that I'm on.
And I really appreciate, Terry, you sharing that, and Nancy as well, the importance of talking about how you feel also, because I hear that often from care partners, is that my loved one already has so much that they're dealing with. They don't need to be bothered by the stuff that I'm going through too. When really, there needs to be some counterbalance with that, where it needs to be both individuals that talk and can share, because they do want to know how you're doing, and just as much as you want to know how they are doing. And so I think there's this underlying expectation as a care partner. I can't show weakness, or I can't share negative feelings, when in fact, one thing that I always tell people is, when in doubt, talk it out. Don't hold it back, don't stuff it down, because then it just becomes more of the pink elephant in the room.
There's a question from Kathy. I'd love to propose to you all. And they write, as a care partner, how do you deal with a person with Parkinson's brain fog or forgetfulness? I find this is so difficult.
I just remind him, what you have a voice in this, please, let's talk. But it does bother me. Like, we just, talked about something and you completely forgot. So, but he actually wants me to remind him of some of the things that he's making me feel, which I feel so fortunate that he cares enough he doesn't get mad. He goes, oh yeah. So I call it, you're floating. You're floating right now. You're not really paying attention. Please, I need you to pay attention. So that's our code word, floating.
And to kind of piggyback off what Nancy says, similar with my wife, there's things I can just say, hey, here's kind of the rundown for the next couple of hours of what we're trying to do. So we kind of keep a schedule of what's going on, and then she may forget. And part of it is me having patience and, just naturally impatient. And that's been the biggest challenge for me, is to be patient with her and be patient with myself as well. To say, hey, yeah, knowing that, hey, brain fog is part of this. Yeah, she may have forgotten this now, but she will remember, or and just be patient with it, and just remind her, hey, we talked about this earlier. Okay, yep, I remember. And so patience is key, and that's something that I still work with every day to try to get better at, because as she continues to evolve with it, we continue to change. We just have to learn new ways of dealing with things.
Yeah, we figured something out together when I finally asked, who do you need me to show up as in these moments when you're feeling foggy? Like when you've lost a word or you lost the trail of the conversation in a social setting. Do you want me to sit back and let you wrestle till you find it, or would you prefer I jump in with the word I know you're trying to get to? How do you need me to be to help you the most? And it was really clarifying, because he was able to say, in this situation, I need you to just hang back. But if this is happening, it's really helpful for me if you'll just jump in. And sometimes I know I do. I just forget to ask a simple question like that, like, how can I help?
I
I
want
think
to,
I just
go
want
ahead.
to, I support all that a lot, because my husband now stutters a lot, so he can't find the words. And it's so normal to want to, I say the word, and he just, no, I want to find it and do it myself. So we've actually had to talk to our boys. We have 4 boys, and let them know, you don't need to finish a sentence. Just be patient, let dad finish it, because it helps him feel you know, that he's still in some control at least.
There's a tool that Ellen wrote in our chat here sharing that she finds it really helpful by having a whiteboard and write out the schedule or planned activities for each day to avoid that constant reminder throughout the day. And I want to acknowledge, Ellen, that that takes work too. You know, this is another responsibility, another adaptability that we as people navigating a life with Parkinson's as care partners are sort of absorbing. So how do we continue to find connection with the person we're supporting with Parkinson's in the midst of change? And I'm seeing in the chat here this challenge of still feeling close, finding that closeness with our person with Parkinson's. No matter what kind of dynamic or relationship you have, if it's spousal or daughter-father or adult-child, how do we remain close as our relationship evolves in this sort of evolution of Parkinson's disease and us as care partners? How do we stay connected? How do you feel connected to your person?
I can share, at least from a father-daughter perspective, and especially even going back to the identities role. I think for me, I did not think about, especially at my young age, that I would be turning into a role of scheduler, helper, delegator, and all of that. And so for me, and I was very, very close with my dad, that connection came with recognizing that the joyous things may look different. It may look like, let's just have a bowl of ice cream because this disease, it slows your life down and it almost forces you to have that connection. And so strangely, that is how that connection remained, is slowing things down, being intentional, and taking the time because we know we're not going anywhere. And so for me, that's what recognizing, rediscovering that connection looks like.
Right, and just to jump on to what Lindsey said, similar is we try to. It's things that we used to travel a lot. We don't travel like we used to. So even if it's something as simple now as, hey, let's just watch YouTube videos of places that we still would like to go. If we rather than we used to go out all the time. So rather than go out to eat, hey, I can go get it. We can make our own little restaurant here in the house. And so we try to find different things that we used to do and just say we're different, right? We just, and still try to find things and set times aside that we can just have a moment. And even if it's 20 minutes, she may not feel like doing anything, if it's just sit in the room next to her and just talk or just be or just look at each other. So we try to do little things like that to keep some sort of relationship like we've always had.
Yeah, we still try to do things that we enjoy. It may look a little bit different, like you said. Um, you know, just not able to do some of the same things, but we love concerts, but those get crowded and difficult. But we found there was an app that does streams live concerts that you can watch. So just things like that to try to keep those things that we enjoy just in a different way.
I often will tell folks exactly that. Like, what are your shared values? What are those things that are important to you that may need to look different, but it can still be something that you do together. So I think that's a perfect example of that. That okay, we may not be able to navigate the crowds and the logistics of a concert, but how can we still share that enjoyable time together of immersing in music? And so, it is truly about being able to kind of approach some of this, I think, with a little bit of a fresh perspective and beginner's mind that, I need to look at this situation differently. And it doesn't mean that different is bad. It just means different will look different. And so how do we not assign qualitative value to some of that in a way that then may diminish the experience and still really enjoy it?
I gotta be honest, this bothers me because he can't do what he used to do, but I can.
So how do you balance that, Nancy, if at
I
all?
don't think we are right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of guilt that comes with it, right? I can go and enjoy this, but the the opportunities are lessening over time, right?
Yeah.
Frustrated. And I think we as care partners often don't talk about our frustrations because we're afraid to have them at all. Sometimes I get frustrated, and one of the things that helps me stay in compassion around it is to really kind of sort it out. Am I frustrated with Jeff as a person, or am I frustrated with this disease and the situation it's put us in? And 90% of the time, I'm really frustrated with just that we have to deal with this as a family. And when I can see it that way, it helps me come back to the compassion piece and the empathy piece and to understand, he's not doing this on purpose. He would like to go to a concert too. It's not just him. It's the disease a lot of times.
Yeah, Terry, Nancy, you both just brought up a conversation that's happening in the chat. The lived experience of frustration, not being able to express that frustration or feeling that I'm not able to express the frustration, or how I'm feeling as a care partner with my person with Parkinson's because of its impact of my share on them. I see everyone's writing in the chat here of saying, giving thanks to, and this is why we're here. It's not all unicorns and rainbows. We don't want to use toxic positivity, right? This is hard. This is hard stuff. And navigating a relationship, whatever the dynamic might be, requires a lot from the person with Parkinson's and the care partner. So Nancy, thank you for voicing your truth of, this frustrates me.
I have a girlfriend whose husband is 92. I'm 68. She's 68. He doesn't have Parkinson's, but the same thing has gone on in her life. And it was really interesting for us to finally say it to each other. Like hers is age difference and physical, as he ages. It was really, what I'm trying to say is if you can find somebody who can kind of have some empathy for what you're going through, and then not about answering or having a solution, but just being heard that it's happening helps.
I would also I commend you guys for talking about these things because they are really challenging and sometimes they echo so loudly in our own heads and we feel like we can't talk about them. And I would just challenge though is what you're feeling guilt or is what you're feeling grief?
I'm feeling loss.
Yeah. And that's the part that I think doesn't always come up in that description is that it is loss, there is grief, but there's this sense of guilt that I'm, quote unquote healthier, I'm not dealing with this, but and so there is this, but guilt implies that you did something wrong, which no one has done anything wrong here. But there is a loss. And I think that it is important to be able to label that and to lean into understanding what that feels like and how it shows up and how it is about the Parkinson's, right? And I've actually had patients and their families who've named the Parkinson's, and so it's Bob the Parkinson's that is causing these issues rather than it's my loved one. They're not doing it on purpose and they want to do these other things too. And so it's almost personifying the Parkinson's in a way that allows it to kind of, that's where you channel some of that frustration rather than the person that you love. So it's just a thought, but I've had some really interesting names people have come up with for Parkinson's.
I think that's true. I think it's a sadness for, like in our case, we're young, not even retired yet. And, you have all those future ideas of once you do retire and, things that you're going to do. And obviously that's not going to happen anymore. And so I think there is that sadness.
Thinking of, just being really present with the chat, and each of you who have each of you have a different connection to Parkinson's, whether it's earlier on in life, supporting a wife with Parkinson's and children, having a father who passed away, or in the later stages that you're really navigating, Nancy and Terry, the unique situation that you and Jeff have. I'm curious if you could tell your earlier self one thing about this evolving journey, what would it be? What would it be as we navigate the seasons of Parkinson's?
Mine is "This too shall pass." And I'm not very religious, I just remember that quote. But I will tell you that if I just say, it's okay, this will pass, we'll move on, we'll get through it, that helps me anyway. That it's not permanent, because it really isn't. And that it just makes me more comfortable to think it's not going to be every day like this, because they're not. They're all very different. And I also think I am very realistic. Like this, he's not doing this to me. He's trying to do his best, but I need to like step back and think of his point of view.
Yeah, Nancy said the same thing. This too shall pass. The exact same thing. Because every day is different. And some days when it's really difficult and it's like everything is off schedule, she's feeling really bad. It's like everything blows up in one day. And you just have to say, okay, take a breath. Um, it's gonna be all right. And so if I would tell my younger self something, I would say be patient and enjoy every day that you have, especially those good days. Because there's absolutely challenges every day. Every day you don't know what you're gonna wake up to, no matter how well you think you're gonna plan, but it will pass. And just keep the faith and keep hanging in there.
Yeah, I think just remembering patience and just trying to enjoy the little things as they come up.
The other thing I think is important is to have your own life. So you're with my husband a lot, but I also have developed friendships outside of our family and our marriage, which I find, even though it's like maybe once a week, it's just really important because it's not talking about him or us or the family. And if you don't have that, I'm sure there's like social clubs or something that you can join, that you can meet new people and just learn about other things that are going on in life through them. And it relieves the sort of internal stress that you suppress all day long. At least I find that.
And again, Nancy, I agree with that. And then don't feel guilty about it either.
No.
Yeah, so if you need a break, find somebody, find an outlet, and just go and be and just enjoy that time on your own. So but yeah, Nancy, I agree completely.
I found a walking group of women in my neighborhood that I didn't know existed a year ago. And now we walk 2 to 3 miles almost every day, chat, 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 and talking about everything from politics to, and they once in a while ask about Jerry. They don't, I've never told them you can't talk about Jerry. I've never said that. But it's like they just enlighten my world and they make it a fun hour, hour and a half. And then I come back and I'm okay. So I'm wishing that for everybody on this call, that they could find that outlet and just let yourself be you with other people. It's a stress reliever.
I think if I could tell my earlier self one thing, and I remind myself of this regularly, though I forget it often, is to stay present. Because that's what you have right now. And, oftentimes, I have a tendency to look at the past and how great things were, or look at the future and think about how horrible they could become when, neither of those is really helpful, but staying in the present moment and reminding myself and this sounds woo-woo, but it works for me. This is exactly where you're meant to be in this moment in time. And
Mm.
this is the work that you have in front of you to do. And then oftentimes I'll look back on those moments and realize that I've grown through it. We've grown through it, and we'll have a difficult patch, and it'll feel like just insurmountable, and it's never going to end. And then it does end, and then in hindsight, I realized it actually made us closer. It made us communicate more clearly. It gave me a better understanding of what Jeff was dealing with, or him a better understanding of what I'm struggling with. And so, even in those really hard moments, and I'm seeing in the chat a lot of frustration, a lot of worry, a lot of concern, and a lot of difficulty, and that's just par for the course. But we've all done hard things before, and we can do this. But staying in the present moment and just really focusing there and realizing that this is a growth moment. Doesn't always work for me because it can get really difficult, but when I can remind myself to stay in awareness of that truth, I think I handle things better, and I think we handle things better as a family.
I would add that you don't have to be your parents' or your partner's hero. It's not our job to cure this disease, but to simply be present, like everyone else has already shared. And that your identity, what I will also tell my earlier self as I've evolved, is that your identity, you don't lose it, it just shifts. You may have to form a new one, but you don't lose it fully. It definitely is just shifting, and that joy is still there. It just comes in smaller moments, but you have to be present to recognize those joyous moments, because the really challenging times can certainly overshadow the smaller joyous moments. And so that is definitely something I would leave with the group and tell myself. And even on the guilt, I think we're going to talk about this later on, Krista, but Vincent had discussed not to feel guilty. I've definitely learned that guilt is an emotion and not a reflection of your caretaking. So I keep that in mind as well.
I thank you all for speaking to your younger selves, their earlier versions of yourself, and what you might share with them in hindsight, that you've been on this journey now. I wanted to read a quote that TJ posted in the chat. Today might be a bad day, but in a good life. So Taylor, did you have any final words on this subject of the evolution of Parkinson's and navigating the seasons of change before we roll into our next subject?
I'm just reading through all of these comments that are coming up in the chat, and I'm so grateful everyone is being so transparent and candid about the things that they're feeling and the things that they're going through, and can allow for others to support and validate some of what they're going through, because obviously you can see that you're definitely not alone. And I think also, Terry, it is not woo-woo to be in the moment on things. Like I think it's the only choice we have is to be in this moment in order to make the most of it, right? And I think Lindsey, you said it beautifully with, saying that it's how you capture the small, beautiful moments that occur. And I think sometimes when we're in a really tough moment, it feels like it's going to last forever. It's kind of like when you feel nauseous, you think you're never not going to be nauseous.
Mm.
And so when you are able to then also be in the moment and appreciate the things that are going well, it doesn't feel quite so one-sided as you continue to find some sort of balance in the chaos of some of these days. So thank you guys so much for sharing.
All right, with that, our panelists, you can mute your videos, take a break for a few minutes while we shift into our next subject.
So we are going to transition into, I think a lot of people are going to have perspectives on this topic. So we're talking about boundaries. And it's a conversation I have incredibly often with families, when to step in and when to step back. And there is no one particular algorithm or answer for this. It's an incredibly delicate question. What support do I offer, and how much? Because, on the one hand, care partners really want to be helpful, but they also don't want to overstep. They recognize that their support can make a huge difference, but they also see how much their loved ones value their independence. And so from care partners, I'll often hear, I don't want to hover, I don't want to satellite them, but I don't want to watch them struggle or be unsafe. And I think that that really captures the heart of this topic of how do we balance between safety, autonomy, and dignity. And I think, the word barrier gets a bad rap sometimes, and we think of it as limits or some sort of over intrusive policing. But I think it's important to remember that boundaries are not barriers. They're not ways in which we are trying to diminish or separate people. It can be a tool that helps to preserve autonomy and respect and mutual understanding. And we know that, boundaries can help to define where care supports someone instead of taking over them. And so it gives both partners room to breathe and feel capable, seen, and respected. And I don't, again, it's never going to be a perfect balance or boundary. And sometimes it takes a lot of conversation to get there because we know that as Parkinson's changes, so does that balance. So what felt right a year ago may need to shift now. And there are times when you do need to step in and make sure that your loved one is safe, and times when maybe you do need to step back and allow them an opportunity to empower themselves. And so it's not a one-time decision. It's an ongoing, evolving dialogue. And, I'll say the most effective care partners I've worked with, they learn to keenly observe changes over time, changes in movement, balance, motivation, mood, and they try to find ways to communicate those observations with compassion rather than correction. And that shared awareness can ease frustration on both sides. Again, not always a smooth road, not always something that everyone sees eye to eye on, but there are ways in which to try to make this as helpful as possible to both parties. So boundaries can really help protect emotional health too. So when both partners are using the same playbook and they have shared expectations and open communication, there's less walking on eggshells and there can be more confidence about what each person needs. And instead of feeling like they're guessing, care partners can feel assured that I know when to step in and I know when to let go. And Terry brought up earlier how, you know, sometimes you just simply need to ask, what do you need help with? And where do you want me to help versus not? And I think it's that sense of clarity that can help both people feel respected and keep the relationship on a more steady ground. And I think remembering that setting boundaries is really, it's an act of care for you, for your loved one. It creates space for patience and sometimes some humor, and hopefully for the ongoing process of adapting together. So as we kind of broach into this next discussion, I would invite you to think about where your balance lies. When do you feel the urge to step in, and when might it help to pause and, let someone, be more independent, even if it may take them a little bit longer or they struggle to some extent. So reminding yourself, boundaries are not walls. They're meant to be bridges. They help both partners to stay connected with clarity, with kindness, with compassion. And so with that, we'll bring our panelists back who will share some of their own experiences with this delicate and sometimes messy dance and how they've learned to recognize when to step in and when to step back and how to keep communication as grounded as possible in respect.
Yes, I think the communication is the key, talking back and forth. And, at first with his diagnosis, he was very reluctant to getting help with anything. Um, and we've gradually evolved. I feel like I will ask him if he needs assistance with something. And he's more open to letting me know if he actually does now, compared to what he used to be. And um sometimes he'll actually now sometimes ask for assistance without me asking him first, I should say. So it's evolved, and we're just getting there with what he can and can't do and things like that. And um, and I guess one of the things, like one of his medications made him sleepy with driving. And I said, no, I can't, I can't ride in this car with you driving. And so, especially long distances, he would fall asleep and so, or become tired. And so, we transitioned to that. It took him a bit to accept that, but I think now he likes that he doesn't have that and I have to do all the driving. So anyway, but yeah, it's just, as those things come up and finding out if how he feels about it and the communication.
Yeah, I hear the checking in, Jennifer. That's what I heard. That both Terry and Taylor just alluded more to was, where do you want help at? Or do you want my help? Can I help you? And I also hear that continuous adaptation through communication between you and your husband who's living with Parkinson's. So I really appreciate you modeling what that could look like.
There are times when he needs my help, but I don't know how to help him. Like tying a bow tie. We went to a wedding 2 weeks ago. We did the best. I thought it looked okay, you guys. And then about an hour into the wedding, he goes to the bathroom, comes out, and it's all cockeyed. And he goes, "How could you let me do this?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, you must have moved. But I have a feeling in all the pictures we're going to see this thing that." But we laughed about that because I don't know how to tie a bow tie. So what I'm trying to say in this funny story is that sometimes you just can't help them. And you have to acknowledge that too. And I said, "Why don't you just, as a tux and everything, but could you just sort of not wear a bow tie and be that change agent in the whole party, the guy who doesn't have a bow tie on?"
And sometimes you're going to get it wrong. You just completely implode the whole situation. One kind of helpful thing that's worked for me, because I am very much recognizing my need to control, and I want to help, and I think we want to jump in and we want to help, and we know that can be frustrating. So one of the things that started to work for us is I stand next to him in the situation and say, "I'm here when you're ready for help."
Mm.
So that gives me a little peace that I'm helping, and gives him the time to find his independence. He took a horrible fall down the back stairs a few weeks ago, and I thought we were about to spend the day in the emergency room. And I said, "What do you need from me right now?" And he's like, "Just give me a minute, give me a minute." And then he was able to get himself up, which surprised me. But the whole time I'm wanting to get down there on the ground with him and help him up. It's just kind of a situation where it worked better for him for me to be out of his way so he could navigate his own body, getting off the ground. But I find it really helpful to just kind of say, "I'm right here." Like getting out of the car sometimes is difficult. So I'm right here when you're ready. My hand is here. You don't have to take it, but it's here.
I would often find myself pausing and taking a step back and asking, is this unsafe for them or is this inconvenient for me? And so sometimes I think when you step back and reflect, which is why I mentioned that this disease causes you to slow down, because many of us in this room still work. And so I have to go to this meeting, I have to go here, 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 I have to get it all done. Slow down. And again, is this unsafe for them or is this inconvenient for me? And then one story was my dad was on a walker at that point, had gotten up very slowly and just kind of waddled his way to the kitchen and into the closet, the pantry. And I just asked him, I said, "Well, Dad, are you looking for something?" He's like, "No, I'm just feeling peckish." And so I asked, I said, "Well, can I get you something? Can I fix you something?" He said, "No, I got it." And I really wanted to just find it, but he found it and it wasn't a problem. So in that moment, that told me I don't have to do everything, because independence is someone's dignity. And kind of like what Nancy said, my father was very active. I mean, running and swimming and tennis and doing all the things. And then, especially as a man, having to now rely on your daughter to help and assist you with things, I'm sure was very, very challenging for him, especially in the beginning. And so I'll leave it with that of just, if it's inconvenienced yourself and it's not a bother or unsafe for them, just let them try.
Yeah, I'm similar to Lindsay. A lot of times it's because I work from home, thankfully, so I can help with my wife. And I'm just used to just taking over, right? And that's just not the way to do it. It's like, okay, let me help you before I have to run to this meeting. Um, I see you're struggling, let me help you. But my wife does better if I just leave her alone. Um, like during this meeting, she's like, yeah, you go and you do it because I know she's like, yeah, for 2 hours he's going to be gone, and I can do what I want to do. And the thing she can do a lot, and she does better when I just let her do her own thing. And I think we're just used to seeing somebody to kind of transition to things they couldn't, not like they used to be, but they still can do a ton. And it's taken me forever to realize that. And I just think just keep them safe, and I try to keep my wife safe. Hey, you got everything set up. If you're trying to come down the stairs, let me know or something like that. But just let them do their thing, and my wife will call me if she needs me or ask for help.
I'm definitely hearing from folks that, safety is the boundary, right? That, if something is a potential threat to safety, that's when, that conversation sometimes needs to be more involved, and there may need to be more support. But if it isn't a safety issue and it's more, well, I could do this more efficiently. I could do this faster. I could just get it done and then you don't have to worry about it. That is the areas to maybe look at, pulling back or being able to allow them a little bit more independence and time on their own to do some of those things. So I think that is often the question that I will ask people. Is it an issue with safety, or is it something else that we need to discuss? And another thing that I'll often tell people is that there needs to be an implicit contractual obligation that um, the person with Parkinson's needs to ask for help when they need it. That, and because a lot of times the care partners I work with get really worried that they're not going to ask for that help. And so we have to have that conversation about, if there is a situation where you do feel like you need help, it needs to be explicitly discussed, and please bring it up. So I love that, Terry, you're like, I'm here. I'm here if you need me. My hand is here if you want to take it. But the implicit expectation is that he will if he does need it. And that's the part that I think establishes a sense of trust and a shared understanding.
There was a conversation sort of happening in the chat too, and I know with all our panelists here, we've chatted about this over the months as we were preparing for this event, and this idea of when to step in and when to step back. And there's a few people remarking in the chat, my person with Parkinson's expects to be waited on. They expect for all the help to be received, all the support to be received. And we also chatted, offline of this, where do I step in as sort of like a coach? You got this, you can do it, you need to do your exercise class. And when do I step back and let them have that rest? So I'm curious, to resurface this conversation of someone who's expecting a lot of help, a lot of support, and us as care partners to sort of be the cheerleader, be the coach, and say, you can do it yourself. When do we step in? When do we step back? When do you step in? When do you step back?
We just had a really kind of come to understanding together where I realized that perhaps I was setting up conditions where Jeff was relying on me because I wanted to take care of everything. And there was a moment where he realized, you do a whole lot and I could do more. And I didn't instigate this. It was really great on his part. And so he's really started to do more of the chores around the house, things that he had always done before, but I just started taking care of out of my care partner monkey mind, I guess. It felt like I needed to take care of everything, and realizing that I was setting up a condition where he wasn't even able to help because I wouldn't let him. And so I'm recognizing that in myself lately, that he can do a lot, and I can ask for help too. And he's very willing to do those things if I'll only ask. But I think sometimes it's just easier for me as a care partner to just jump in and do. instead of wait and let and trust.
Yeah, I kind of get that with the him at, I guess there are occasions where he'll ask for something or me to do something, and it may be things that I know that he can do himself, and it's like, okay, well, and sometimes it's, I'm busy doing this, you can get up and get that yourself or whatever the case may be. And that's a tough one sometimes because it could potentially start an argument too on what can and can't you do or whatever. But again, it's a door to communication, opening and discussing um things. And there may be times too where I'll just blatantly ask him to do, a chore around the house or something that I know that he's capable of, because and say, I'm busy doing this. Would you be able to start dinner or start this or do that? And just not necessarily letting him, I don't know, like people were saying, just kind of get away with not doing things because he just doesn't feel like it. But yeah, so it's kind of a balance there on what can you do and what can't you do,
It is.
and
I call it
talking about it.
red hen, my little red hen, my inner red hen. I'll just do it myself. I'll just do it myself. And that's not helpful.
Terry, would you repeat the phrase that you mentioned earlier? Is this unsafe for them, or is it inconvenient for me?
Yeah, it's something like that, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't recall exactly what it was, but yeah, it is. It's kind of like, is this something that's just going to make me feel comfortable because of my control needs, or is it something that this person could do? Like safety, we've talked a lot about this, and it's also in the chat that safety is a top concern. So obviously, I'm going to step in then, and I will say, I need you to use handrails when we're near stairs. I just do. That's my expectation. I can let a lot of things go, but I need you to use handrails. So things like that. But I love Jennifer, what you were saying about just like there are things around the house that our person with Parkinson's can still do if we let them. So if it's light recycling, I'm like, carry that out to the curb. You can do that, I mean, but otherwise, my little red hen self is just going to do it because it's just so much easier. And then you alluded to like, we don't really want to start an argument. But then I realized lately, just because you have Parkinson's doesn't mean you can't be in an argument with me. Let's have some productive discussion and get some of this stuff out. I think it's our tendency, at least it's mine, to handle everything with kid gloves. And I don't know that that's really helpful for either of us, honestly. Obviously with safety, and you want to be empathetic and all of those things, but there are certainly limitations. And I think that for myself, I set them way too high, when really there's a lot more that we could be doing together as a unit rather than me doing alone.
Mm.
Well, I think too, like sometimes I just want to get it done more quickly. And so instead of allowing him to do it, I just do it myself.
I think I love the little red hen comment. I'm cracking up about that, Terry. I think it's a process though. I think of knowing thyself, right? Because a lot of times these situations are going to bring out pieces and parts of your coping style, of your character, of how you tend to be under stress. And it just kind of amplifies it. So I often see that, people say, well, I've always been, a little bit controlling or a little bit type A, or there are certain pieces that then are really amplified by these situations. And so how do you learn more about yourself in this process? I think it is a process of self-discovery, and then recognizing, how does this work in this situation and how may it actually kind of not work for this situation? I might be a bit conflict avoidant, therefore I'm going to handle things with kid gloves, or I'm just not going to go there. We're just going to, I'll do it and get it over with, and then we don't have to argue about it. But eventually you are going to end up having this discussion or arguing about it. So I think, again, know yourself, know what some of your tendencies are by nature and by experience, and how is it interacting with your role as a caregiver now?
One build on that I found is it really that important? And you let it go, and you'd be surprised at how many things that don't get done that were not important. So if it's not about safety, and I guess my husband loves to eat, so that's another thing, safety and food. Otherwise, we're very laid back. I mean, my kids will come home and go, "Why did you not do this?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, because it's not that important." So anyway, I just want to throw that out there.
Vincent, I saw your eyes get real bright when Nancy was like, it's not that important. What
Yeah.
is important?
So similar to Nancy, there's so much that I try to say, hey, this has to be in this order, things are done this way. This kind of personality of, hey, these have to be done. And it doesn't have to be. If you look at your list, look at the list of things that have to be done, like, hey, this doesn't have to be done. If it's laundry, we have clothes to put on. I mean, laundry can wait another day. Or if you if you need to fold clothes, I mean, they're there. We got space for it. They need to be done right now. And there's just so many little tasks that I make urgent, especially things that my wife used to do that I'm trying to take, like, hey, can you help or whatever, that just aren't that urgent. And you can just say, chill. It's not worth the argument. It's not worth the stress. Usually that I put on myself trying to get things done that just simply aren't that important.
Right. I've also found things that I do now that he used to do, but I really like doing them. So, I mean, there's another side to this too, right? That like he can't take up his laundry. He does his own laundry, each your own. The laundry basket is too heavy for him now. So I'll just take it up. And I like, you're gonna find surprises as the tasks move on to somebody else that you might say, boy, this is no big deal. I'll just do it.
And another thing with tasks too, someone at some point told me this is that I tried to do so much, and you just try to set like a top three. Like that's what's my thing. Like three things a day that, hey, I will accomplish these three. The rest don't matter. So, and sometimes I combine something at work with something at home and just say, hey, these are the things that matter for today. And once those are done, the sense of accomplishment is there, and the rest, let's push it off for another day.
Yeah, I also hear us coming back to the concept of setting boundaries with ourselves and acknowledging like what's important, what's not important. This can wait another day so that I can rest. And so I want to ask this question because I feel this is very important for us as a community to recognize when we set boundaries, it is from a place of love. And I'm curious if there is an example one of you or all of you could offer where you have found yourself placing a boundary that was supportive to you as a person with as a care partner providing support to someone with Parkinson's.
I think like I was saying before, the driving thing.
Mm.
It was, I guess I kind of put my foot down on that one. I was said, with this medication, you fall asleep easily, so we're just not I'm not getting in the car. But and driving long distances I think was the hardest part for him. And um that was one that I just put my foot down. Otherwise it's more of asking his opinion on things, but um and talking it through. But yeah, that was one that I just put my foot down on. So
I think for me, I wouldn't even know if I would necessarily describe it as a boundary, but especially when he was first diagnosed, which was during COVID and was starting to feel a little bit better due to physical therapy and whatnot. but then didn't really start to decline, but I feel like started to get into a depressive state, because who wasn't depressed during that time? It is COVID, and just refused to do anything. I don't want to do the boxing. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And finally, I had to just have a baby girl daddy moment. I said, Dad, this is hard on all of us. And help us help you. If we just at least see you attempt and try, will go a very long way for all of our mentalness and well-being. And I think that lit a fire underneath him, because he was a loving man and wanted to be understanding that this disease is happening to you, but we're partnering with you along with it, and all of our lives have changed because of it. And so I think it was a matter of not necessarily setting a boundary, but an expectation of what we at least expected him to do, of what we knew that he was capable of doing, but just didn't have the mindset to want to do it. And I think that really opened up our relationship to be, we were already close, but much closer, because it kind of, again, that slowing downness forces you to have that closeness in that relationship, and what it didn't look like before.
This comes back to the conversation of, when do I be a loving daughter, a loving spouse, a loving friend, and when do I push them, recognizing that apathy is a part of Parkinson's disease. And this is a conversation that's been refueled in the chat here. So how do we keep them moving, and also just at some points just let them be, because the disease does cause these changes to our people with Parkinson. So I love your example of having that heart-to-heart moment with your father, Lindsey, and saying, I need you to do this for me. If it's not for you, it's for me. And so how do we continue to inspire, encourage, cheerlead our person with Parkinson's, but also offer space for them to just be?
I know when he comes back from playing tennis, I always ask, how do you feel? Or what, how'd you do? It's not a competitive, it's a clinic that he goes to twice a week. So it motivates him to know that I care, and that I'm looking forward to him coming home, and we talk a little bit about it. But lately he's been falling and he's gotten hurt. And so there comes the need soon in my future of, do I have a boundary that I need to say, look, you can't play that level of tennis because you're physically having issues with it. Can you find a different level? You know how, they whatever they do, they grade you. I don't play tennis, but so I'm anticipating that discussion, because right now he hasn't been able to play for a week and a half. His leg is swollen, and he wants to get back. He wants to get back, and I'm glad he's motivated, but that may not be the right level of tennis for him to play. And he refuses pickleball. Refuses it. So I played pickleball. It's not the same sport at all. So I get it. But that's coming. It's going to come where we're going to have a discussion that you can't play it that way. You got to go down and, play with new beginners or something. I don't know what the answer is yet.
I think Nancy must have been in our house, because we had that exact same conversation. We are a tennis family. And when we try to get them to play pickleball, it's not the same. And I want to play tennis. And so, to answer your question, Krista, I think for us, we quickly learned to offer options instead of expectations. So instead of, you need to walk because you need to move, it's, do you want to walk today, or do we want to sit on the porch today? These are the options. And so for us, that really helps with cheerleading and the pushing. Because also with the cheerleading, when he did finally select one of the two options instead of setting an expectation, that's great. You did an awesome job. You should feel very proud of yourself. And I can't wait to see what we're going to do tomorrow. And just also keeping in mind too, really trying to identify, I think this was already said, what kind of support that they may need in the moment. There was a point when he didn't want to do anything physical, but he just wanted to talk, or maybe do one of those brain puzzles that we had for him that was available, and things like that. But I think that started because we were giving him options and not expectations. But then also normalizing rest, and recognizing that yesterday is not going to look like tomorrow. And so if they did it yesterday, that does not mean they can do it tomorrow, but we're still going to celebrate that you did it yesterday.
I found it really useful to kind of position boundaries and expectations as just new norms. So we love to travel, but travel is very different now for us and much, much lighter. But our new norm is I will handle the scheduling, getting us through the airport and all of that. But you have one job when we travel, and that is to triple check your medications before we leave. Like we cannot be in a foreign country without your meds. Like I can't that's a need that I have. I need to know that you have your medication. I'll help you check it, but that's a new norm for us. We have to triple check meds before we even step out the door. And that gives me a lot of peace when we're traveling because that's my biggest concern. I don't want him to be without his medication in a place where I can't get it easily for him. So just kind of new norms. This is a norm. We don't do things after 8 p.m. We don't accept party invitations after 8 p.m. Neither of us has the energy for that anymore, and that's our new normal and we're okay with it. So kind of positioning it not so much as a demand or an expectation or a boundary, but just this is our new normal and we both need to look at it realistically. This is what we can do and this is what we can't manage and go from there.
Yeah, I think just having, not just saying no, but having, asking his opinion. An example, his sister, she has seats at a football games and asked if we would want to go to one. Well, we sat down and talked through what that would look like and where their seats are and all the stairs and, talking through and how much, yes, he would love to go, but he realized on his own that that would be too big of a challenge for him. So, it's just talking about what those boundaries for him look like and what how he feels about it, I guess, was something that we found beneficial for talking it through on understanding that. So
And I also found that our role wasn't to push him to do more, but to celebrate who he was in that moment and taking a step back and recognizing when they needed space to just simply be and, encouraging without pressure, but being present without control. I think Terry was mentioning control a lot. Admittedly, that wasn't really our biggest issue. We're not really super into control, but I get it. I get it. And sometimes in moments you do want to have control. And that's the thing, we're all going to have varying gifts that we're just naturally good at. And there's going to be things that some of us may not have had to deal with like others, because as we know, Parkinson's, it's an hour by hour and not a day by day. And so again, it's just going back to celebrating what did we do last hour that maybe we weren't able to accomplish the next day.
Yeah, there was an example someone offered that they provide support to 3 different types of chronic disease. And the boundary that she set for herself is once a week, even for 30 minutes, I'll go and have coffee with my friends. And that I'm also hearing in the chat that there's some confusion around the word boundary. It's Taylor, I'd love for you to jump in on how we can reframe that dialogue around boundary. I'm doing this and this supports me because X, Y, and Z so that I can show up for you and myself from a place of love and compassion versus the beast of resentment.
Yeah, I think that, again, boundaries kind of get a bad connotation attached to it, that it is about control or constraining. And I think that, we can reframe it, and I think this is what everyone has discussed, is that it is creating a shared expectation of what life is going to look like in terms of what support is needed, what we're going to create some independence around, having conversations about that because it does change. And so I think that, you don't have to use the word boundary. You can use any word you want. You can say that this is, a shared expectation. You can say that this is our game plan. You can say that, this is, our mutual understanding. You don't have to say the word boundary if that seems to create a bristliness in you or someone else. And so, words are just they're words, and we can choose to use whichever ones we want. So, think about what you want that to look like. Again, it can be, this is our Parkinson's playbook, and this is what these are our understandings, these are our rules, if you want to use that word instead. But whatever it is that you would want to say, and create some acceptance, or maybe some gentleness around this topic. I also think, Nancy had mentioned with your husband and tennis, how we bring some of those things up with compassion, right? I'm noticing that you're limping when you get back, or I'm noticing, that your limbs are swelling, or I'm noticing that you're having more falls. And I wanted to check in with you about that. How do you feel like things are going? And so creating, a dialogue, right? And so in your mind, you're like, I really don't want you to play tennis anymore. But, how do we say that in a way that is going to engage the person, and they want to talk about it, versus them saying, oh gosh, this is something that's now going to be taken away from me.
Right.
And so it's never necessarily going to be, like, again, a perfect conversation, but how can we make it as mutual as possible?
I think that's a great segue into our next subject of balancing support and also balancing the self, the person who's providing support for someone with Parkinson's. Does that feel like a good place to kind of jumpstart into that conversation, Taylor?
Yeah, absolutely.
My panelists can take a break, get some water, and we'll be right back.
So this is our final topic of the day, which is balancing support and the self. And I think that this is something that a lot of care partners quietly struggle with. And how do you care for someone else without losing yourself in the process? And I feel like that theme has come up countless times in the chat as people are trying to figure out how to make sure that they can care for their loved one. And sometimes they feel like that may leave little space for caring for themselves. And I think it's incredibly natural for care partners to become more fully absorbed in the needs of their loved ones. There's appointments and medication and daily routines, emotional ups and downs for you and for them. And before long, you, the person behind all of that support and care, start to fade into the background. And I'll often hear people say, I'm fine. I just don't have the time for me right now. Or I'll do it later, I promise. I'll get, this taken care of, or I'll find me time, just not today. And I think the truth of the matter is that we have to remember that maintaining your own identity and well-being is not selfish. It is essential not only to your health, but to the quality and sustainability of the care you're able to give to others. So when you nurture yourself physically, emotionally, socially, you're not stepping away from caregiving. This is not a zero-sum game. You're actually strengthening your ability to care. And that's the part that I think people don't often recognize. And they may say it to others and tell others they need to take care of themselves in order to take care of their loved ones, but they don't necessarily always assume it for themselves. And so you kind of almost think about it like tending a flame. If you keep giving light but never add fuel, eventually that flame is going to burn out. So your energy, your sense of purpose, your joy, that's the fuel that makes caregiving possible. And this idea of taking care of oneself and balancing with, care for others, it brings up these, that G word, guilt for caregivers, as if taking time for rest or to see friends or enjoy something that isn't related to Parkinson's means that you're somehow neglecting your role or not doing enough. But really, it's important to recognize that the opposite is true. The classic saying, when you fill your own cup, you can then show up for others, with steadiness, with patience, and the ability to offer real compassion, not from depletion, but actually from a sense of core strength. And to have that strength is what allows you to respond to situations instead of knee-jerk reacting to them that then later you're like, man, I wish I hadn't have said that, or maybe I was a bit too harsh. So we're able to listen instead of rush and connect and find those small joyous moments rather than just survive and cope. So I've seen time and time again that some of those healthiest care partnerships are the ones where both people have room to be whole. When the caregiver is encouraged to keep a sense of identity, to still laugh with friends, to have quiet moments, and to continue to be more than the helper, because you are more than that. You are still a partner, a friend, a parent, a person with your own hopes and preferences and needs. And I think honoring those parts of yourself actually helps your loved one to feel more at ease also. It keeps the relationship more balanced. It's not just centered on illness, but on shared humanity. So I really want you all to keep in mind that self-care is not a luxury, it's a lifeline. By protecting your well-being, you're protecting the one you love. It's an act of love that keeps you well, and it gives care from fullness rather than empty hands. So, as we continue our conversation, I want you all to reflect on what renewal looks like for you. What restores you? What helps you to feel steady and grounded and yourself? So, I would invite our panelists back to help us to explore this balance and how to sustain both your loved one's care as well as your own wholeness so that support is a shared strength rather than a source of burnout.
Any initial remarks?
Yeah, I guess a little bit different perspective since I still do work. So I do get out. It's not a 24/7 thing right now with his care. And but I do still find ways um to get away on for me time, I guess. I'll, if it means getting a pedicure or lunch with a friend or um I do some scrapbooking weekends and that. So I find ways to get away. So we're in a little bit different place. Like I said, I don't have to do constant watching or taking care or helping. Um, you know, some of my weekends, if it means having food delivered to him, for dinner if I'm not going to be home in time. Sometimes that helps. So we find ways to meet both of our needs, I guess, and have that time.
For me, I teach group exercise cycling, and it's a little easier to already have that built into the schedule because I'm on someone else's schedule literally since I get paid to do it. It's not my full-time job, but I do get paid to do it. And so I live out of town. And so when I was caretaking from my father, I would drive up to their city a couple times a week as things really progressed, about a 90-minute drive there and back. And so my mother and I would have a scheduled plan of Mondays and Thursdays, I think it was. I teach cycling, that this is my protected time. And she honored that. And same with hers. There was days that she wanted to play tennis. Okay, this is my protected time. And that's when I would take over. So that's where that balance for me really struck, and making sure that protected time is built into the calendar. Like Jennifer said, a lot of us here all do still work. And so I very much live and breathe by a calendar. And so I'm very much the type, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. So I would have to put it and place it on the calendar. But I do want to remind people that taking care of yourself and having those hobbies, it's not a reward, it's fuel. You need to do it to keep going for your loved ones. So I don't want anyone to feel like I've done all this, I'm going to reward myself and take that walk, take that coffee. No, that's your fuel. It's like breathing. You deserve that breath. So that's what I would say.
I have to admit, I don't have a problem with being self-caring. Just saying it. We live very independent lives a lot of times, and it's not been an issue yet. I think it will be in the future, or could be. But I believe in what Taylor was saying, is that you need to do this for yourself. It's not about doing like a pedicure or anything like that. It's that I like to work out. I like to be active outdoors, and he's fine with that. He lets, there's right now there's no problem with it. So I don't know how to really respond to this because it isn't an issue yet. But I'm listening to make sure what you guys say you need to do, that I may need to adapt pretty quickly here as he stops playing tennis.
There's a comment in the chat of someone telling their partner that they need a break, and their person with Parkinson's asking, why do you need a break? And them feeling really guilty about asking for time for themselves. I'm curious if any of our panelists here have experienced something like that, how you responded to it. Taylor, if you have any clinical insight that we could provide some perspective on how do we respond. We recognize living with Parkinson's is difficult too. And as a partner of someone impacted by Parkinson's, it impacts me too as a care partner. So how do we balance asking for these needs while also empathizing the impact living with Parkinson's has on our person with Parkinson's?
I would say so. If I had a couple sitting in front of me in the office, and when the care partner said they needed a break, and the other person said, "Why do you need a break?" I would probably ask that person, what makes you ask that question? What is it about them saying this that evokes that reaction for you? Because my guess would be that there is a lot of their own grief and anger, and strong emotion about trying to cope with Parkinson's, that it probably makes it really hard for them to see beyond that, and be able to cultivate a sense of empathy for their loved one, because they may have that perspective, well, you're not the one with Parkinson's, why on earth would you need a break? And so I think there is an opportunity there to have a conversation to help with perspective taking, and to share how one is feeling, and how each are feeling, quite honestly. And so I think that oftentimes when there are questions or comments like that that are laced with hostility, I think that it does maybe require a more conversation, and sometimes one that's mediated, because having it on your own might be a bit more challenging.
Yeah, there's probably been a couple occasions where I've just been at that point where I've said out loud, I'm exhausted and overwhelmed, and then he'll be like, I'm so sorry, that, and then I feel guilty because he's feeling bad, and so I try not to, I guess, express my frustration to him, and then instead just finding ways, whether it's like going to another room or taking deep breaths or whatever, just to kind of reset myself.
I think that what I figured out is that if you don't take a break, your body will take one for you. Like it will wait you out. And so that's something in my own evolution of my identity as a care partner that I'm just now really starting to realize. Like if I don't schedule those smaller breaks, it's harder to ask for a big one. But if I'm not taking those at all, my body and my mind is going to force me into one. I think one of the questions that might be floating out there for many people who are listening is it's it's not so hard sometimes to take a break or to meet your needs as it is to identify what it is you need. I think for me as a care partner, sometimes I put those off to the side and I don't pay attention to them. And so when it comes time for me to figure out what kind of break I need or what kind of release I need, I don't even have access to really knowing what it is sometimes, because I've paid so little attention to it. So I think what I'm learning to do is to pay more attention to and be in awareness of what are my needs and how can I get those met on a regular basis instead of letting it build up until it just kind of comes out in an unexpected way. So maybe we need a little conversation about recognizing what we need as well.
And I also think time away and a break for yourself does not take away from your capacity of caring, but it creates your capacity to care. Because if you are empty, now we got to take care of both of us. And so and so it just goes back to that refueling comment. And admittedly, we were very, very fortunate where my dad just wasn't a complainer. He was really the most pleasant and easiest person, quite honestly, of anyone that could get this disease. And so he definitely made our jobs very easy. But it can be it just can be frustrating because you do feel guilty. It's like, oh, I'm doing all these things and I want to go out and have fun, but I know he's suffering or he's struggling. He cannot right now. And so I think it's giving yourself the grace. And in fact, I had a girlfriend tell me um, when we were there's three of us as far as three daughters, and I'm the youngest, and our lives look very different. I'm the single one. One was out of the state, married with kids. Another one lives in the state, also married with kids. And I have the job that probably has the most flexibility. And so I felt like I would try to just take more on because I knew I had the flexibility to do so, just mainly due proximity in my schedule. And I don't have anyone else to care for. It's just me and a dog. And so my girlfriend had to tell me, she's like, well, Lindsey, your life isn't less important or less valuable than their lives. Just because their lives look different doesn't make it less valuable. And that really stuck with me. It still sticks with me just to this day, just through life. And so, in knowing that, I definitely went forward and not minimizing my life or what's important to me because it is important, just as it's important to everybody else. So,
I would say in the chat, a lot of people saying like the person with Parkinson's, will um, either make them feel guilty or it's a challenge because you're spending so much time. Like I've kind of gone through that because like my wife had some adverse reactions to some Parkinson medicine. So this year, honestly, has been a challenge and it's been more caretaking than it had been in the past. And it also goes to Terry's point too. If you don't take a break, your body will tell you to stop. And I'm guilty of that. So I tell people this, I guess my suggestion is even though your partner may need like 24-hour care or may seem like it, there are breaks in there you just have to take because they are going to go to sleep at some point. They're going to have some time to do things themselves. You have to take advantage of those sections in the day or whatever time they are just for you. And then sometimes if you just put them again in a safe space and make sure that they're all right, have everything they need, I'm going to take this 30 minutes. I'm going to take this hour. I'm going to either go walk up the street and come back. I'm going to play this game. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that. And I just, if people just, kind of keep that in mind that you just got to find a way to do that, or your body will tell you, hey, you can't do it anymore.
I'm hearing there's two camps right now talking about self-care and the ability to not provide care for thyself. I'm really curious, Terry, you really touched on this, and Taylor, you mentioned earlier, like taking responsibility of what your needs are. How do we find that balance, for those of you who are writing in the chat, I do not have the time to take time for myself because all of the time has been given to providing support for someone else. And then we have on the other side of really supportive of the self-care and those who have identified space and time and make the choice to create that time for themselves to sustain their identity outside of being a person that provides support to someone with Parkinson's. So how do we acknowledge those of us who say, I don't have the time for myself? How can we remind ourselves that caring for ourselves is just as important as it is to care for someone that we love?
I wonder if people are talking to the person with Parkinson's about this. Because I just kind of feel like they may be more understanding that you need this self-care or this time for yourself than we're giving them credit for. And I think it was Vincent who said, yeah, my wife likes to do things on her own and she enjoys that time by herself if that's the answer. That was my kind of feeling, is like when he needs it, he's going to say he needs it. And maybe we need to ask them, is I'd like to do this for me. I'm sure there's people who the patient or the Parkinson's person will say, no, I need you all the time. I know that's probably out there too. But I bet there's a lot of them that just haven't really thought about the caretaker in this capacity unless you bring it up. It's a question I have.
I I will address Krista's question. This is going to sound really cliche. You just have to.
Yeah.
You just have to. I think I don't think we treat time like we treat medications that we need, food that we need. Like those aren't options. Neither should your time be optional. And for those who feel like they don't have the time or capacity, I would recommend that instead of, oh, I need a full 12 hours, let's start with 10 minutes. Let's build in 10 minutes to do whatever that might look like for you. And then begin to keep extending that, right? Maybe let's do now in half an hour. And I know we often don't want to leave our loved ones alone. And no one said you had to leave the house necessarily. 10 minutes in the other room to journal, to watch 10 minutes of a Netflix show you were trying to catch up on, or whatever the case may be. Just those really small little things that goes back to finding those small moments of joy, and doesn't always have to be with your partner or the person you're caring for, finding that joy for yourself as well.
And Krista, you asked a really hard question. I think hence why it because I think everyone struggles with this. And I agree with Lindsay. Sometimes I think we have to reconceptualize what self-care means. It's not, necessarily a day at the spa or, these long stretches of time away. I would even break it down further. And sometimes when I'm working with care partners who are in a tough situation where they have to be with their loved one pretty much all the time and resources are sparse, I start with take a deep breath, just 1 to 3 deep breaths. How can even just that help to reset your nervous system in a tough moment? How can that, just be one small way that you're already kind of nourishing yourself because we always hopefully are breathing. But, how can we change that in a way that works for our physiology? And these things matter because something that I often see with care partners while they are active care partners, as well as after they are no longer active care partners, is that there is an extreme hypervigilance for them in their nervous system. They are constantly on and waiting for the next shoe to drop and what's going to happen next. And this anticipatory reaction that's been ingrained in them because of all of the time they've spent caregiving. And so, even just some of those very small moments to take a breath, to reset your shoulders that you might be wearing as earrings, anything that you can do to help your nervous system to calm in those moments is a small and meaningful act of self-care.
I think sometimes we position things that are difficult as impossible. Um, and most things really aren't impossible. They might be really difficult. It might be difficult to find that time for yourself or to make time for yourself. Not as impossible sometimes as it feels. I do think there are situations where it is impossible, but like really kind of think about like, is it really impossible for me to have a few hours to myself, or is it just really difficult for me to organize and figure out how to make that happen? And if it's difficult, start thinking about how I could make it happen.
There's so much more that we could talk about, and there's been lots of side dialogues in the chat. I want you all who are here to know that we see your words, really appreciate all the support that you're offering each other through that function of the chat, and for being present with the words from Terry, Jennifer, Lindsey, Nancy, Vincent, and Dr. Rush. We are down to the final 10 minutes of our program, and I really want to offer some time to each of our panelists who were courageous and vulnerable enough to share their lived experience. If each of you could provide, I don't know, last few words of wisdom, or if there was something in the chat that really struck you, feel free to address it. Taylor, if there's other final words that you would like to share, I welcome those remarks now.
I just greatly really appreciate everyone's transparency and just being candid with, again, how they're feeling, because as you said, it isn't all rainbows and sunshine. There's a lot of really deep, heavy, tough stuff that people have to grapple with as care partners. And one final word I would say on the self-care portion is that the one thing I want to make sure people don't think of self-care as yet another thing, another job, another responsibility, another pressure, that it is truly, it's something that you need to have a relationship with, that is something that you want to do, not a have to. When anything becomes a have to, we don't want to do it. Anything, and self-care included. And so really thinking of ways to frame it as something that is truly for you and something you want to do, and that brings you a sense of joy or simple pleasure or a breath, and instead of it being, oh God, well, here's something else I got to do. So really thinking about ways to reframe that, again, even in very small doses. So, but I really appreciate everyone here. This has been absolutely amazing for me to be able to be part of this.
I would say, as a caregiver, do not try to be all the roles all at once. You cannot be the chauffeur, the researcher, the doctor, the therapist, the medication giver. You cannot be all of those things all at once. Be what you need to be in that moment, moment by moment. And caregiving is not about doing everything, but it's about doing the things that matter in that moment. I think Vincent earlier said it perfectly earlier, excuse me, of some of these things just don't even matter. Who cares if the toilet bowl isn't cleaned right now? Whatever. We can still use the toilet. So just I would say that. And then also too, um, patience and grace. I know I would find myself trying to put myself in my dad's shoes because I cannot imagine what our loved ones are going through. And I know that is very cliche, but it is very, very real. And so they don't want this any more than we do. And none of this is their fault. And so always keeping that in mind as you're going through your day and day to day, and just giving yourself some grace and showing yourself some love. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, patience is definitely a key, and I would just say open communication if possible with your loved one, trying to find ways to make things easier and better for both of you, I think is a key, and just getting as much information is important, I think, and finding your resources.
I like to think of it as each of us have our own journey, and we need to make our way through that on our terms. And getting the support from others who are on their journey with Parkinson's has been very helpful for me, and getting the information and being patient. But there is no one answer to this. And you got to really have that perseverance, I feel, what that fits you, your lifestyle, and your love relationship with the person who has the Parkinson's. So as you listen today, you picked up a few tips. I would just encourage you to look at this as this is your journey. You pick what you need to do and stick with that.
I love that. I want to jump in just on that point because the thing I was thinking is this is such an idiosyncratic disease. And because of that, our journeys are all going to be different. So I have a lot of empathy for people out there who are either listening to us or reading the chat, and you're probably running the gamut between you people are far too Pollyanna, or this is so morbid, you're scaring me to death. I don't want this to happen to us, and the reality is you don't know what this journey is going to be like for you, really. It's so different for different people, and because of that, you just have to put one foot in front of the other and face it head on, with grace as much as you can muster, and love for the person that you're caring for, and realize that you're doing fine. You're doing a lot more than you think you are, and you're doing fine.
Yeah, Terry, I was going to say exactly that. Just tell everybody you're doing a great job. Don't lose sight of that, and that keep hope. The thing is, every day's different, but if you didn't have a person with Parkinson's, you'd be dealing something else. So it's our path that we're on. We'll deal with it like we deal with everything else. Keep hanging in there, and you'll be fine.
I was muted. Thank you, panelists, for your final remarks. And I hope Terry, Jennifer, Lindsey, Vincent, Nancy, if you would just open the chat and see the gratitude that everyone's expressing towards you. You included, Taylor. We couldn't do this without the support of our panelists, and for you being brave to come on this platform and share your lived experience is an act of love for yourself and for this community of care partners providing support to our Parkinson's community. So huge thank you to each of you, Terry, Jennifer, Lindsey, Vincent, Nancy, and Taylor for being here today. And a big thank you to all of you who chose to take this time for yourselves, and also for your person with Parkinson's. There was someone saying, so this has self-care, right? Me attending today's webinar was self-care, right? If you define that as a self-care task, sure, we'll write it off for you. But want to send a big thank you out to everyone who showed up today with open hearts to hear from different perspectives, gain information, and to take a breath. Take a breath. I recognize that care partners are a vital source of well-being for people living with Parkinson's, and I want to share that this dedicated webpage is designed just for you. Whether you're new to caregiving or have years of experience, this page meets you where you are with practical tools. So if there's some questions in there, whether it was about speech, dementia, cognitive changes, sex, intimacy, the things that I kept seeing in the chat, know that they are addressed here on this webpage. Feel free to browse that website for further information. We also have our Care Partner Guide. You can download that at parkinson.org/library. It's a really beautiful, intuitive tool that you can set down, pick up when you need it, and it is free, so feel free to download that Care Partner Guide for yourself. The Parkinson's Foundation provides other virtual program series that is designed to provide education, wellness, and community connection directly to your home. So each week we offer a variety of sessions tailored to enrich the lives of those impacted by Parkinson's. That includes our care partners. You can join us for Mindfulness Mondays, where we intentionally pause. We pause on purpose to breathe and be present with the now moment. So join us. Dr. Taylor Rush does present there once a month for our Mindfulness Mondays. Come back for other subjects around the Parkinson's arena, deep into subjects like Parkinson's basics, art for Parkinson's, OCD, medications, gait and balance. We cover all the things Parkinson's related during our Wellness Wednesdays. And then our Fitness Fridays, where you could join your person with Parkinson's in some movement. We have our expert briefing series that is moderated by our Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. James Beck, and our Spanish language programming, EP Salud en Casa. So there's other ways to stay connected in community virtually online through parkinson.org/PD Health. And since our founding, the Parkinson's Foundation has funded more than $449 million in groundbreaking research and care. And since 2010, we've provided 678 scientists with research grants, helping to transform the way we diagnose and the way that we treat Parkinson's. PD Generation, Mapping the Future of Parkinson's Disease, is a global research study that provides genetic testing and genetic counseling at no cost for people diagnosed with Parkinson's. By joining PD Generation, you can discover your individual connection to the disease while helping map the future of tomorrow's breakthroughs. Please share this opportunity for advancing research towards a cure with your loved one living with Parkinson's. And the Parkinson's Foundation is proud to be a partner in a new NIH-funded study exclusively for family caregivers of people living with Parkinson's disease with cognitive change, hallucinations, or dementia, or people with Lewy body dementia. This study, called Persevere, is entirely virtual. Persevere was created to try to understand whether and how a disease-specific, caregiver-centered educational intervention can improve caregiver knowledge, confidence, strain, and health outcomes. You can learn more about the study by visiting the Persevere website here. You can scan the QR code with your smart device or email the study team, and we'll put the links in the chat for you. And a very special thank you to our sponsor, Amneal Therapeutics, whose generous support makes this program possible. Before we wrap up, I just have one last favor to ask of you. Your feedback is essential to shaping the Foundation's programming. As the webinar concludes, a survey will pop up on the screen. Please take a moment to share your thoughts and let us know what topics you'd like to see in future sessions. Today's program was shaped by your direct feedback and the input of our planning committee. Those were the panelists that you got to hear from today, so please do take a moment. I myself read through each comment. My team analyzes all the data, and we really take your words into consideration when we shape our program. So please just take a few moments to let us know how we can support you in future programs. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have a comprehensive website and many more resources that addresses everything related to Parkinson's, especially in the caregiver role. So you can visit us at parkinson.org, call our helpline at 1-800-4PD-INFO, or email us at helpline@parkinson.org. Thank you all for your presence today, for all that you provide for people living with Parkinson's, and for making space for yourself. May you continue to feel empowered to take time for you so that you can continue to provide compassionate care with respect to your person impacted by Parkinson's. We'll see you soon.